When I was married to my military husband, he was stationed overseas, so I moved our daughters and myself to our next duty station ahead of him. I rented a 100-year-old house in a quiet rural area with a sprawling yard. The place had plenty of charm, but it also had its mysteries, what I came to call the happenings. One of the first things I noticed was something I eventually dubbed the knocker. The basement of the house was dark, damp, and cold. I kept our washer, dryer, and deep freezer down there, so I did have to venture in often, though I kept my 2 young daughters out due to the basement's unsettling atmosphere. The only access to the basement was a door in the kitchen, located right beside the back door. Not long after moving in, I heard a distinct knocking sound. At first, I assumed it was someone at the back door, a neighbor maybe. But as I approached, I realized the knocking was coming from the basement door instead. My daughters were in the living room, and there was no way someone could have entered the basement. When I opened the door, of course, no one was there. The knocking became a weekly occurrence, always startling but never with any explanation. The neighbors and even the homeowner knew nothing about it. Then there was a photograph of my husband and me that I'd hung by the front door. Almost every morning, I'd find it either flipped upside down or lying face down on the floor, nowhere near where it had been hung. I'd replace it and move on, but it became routine. One weekend, my parents came to visit. We were chatting in the living room when we heard knocking on the back door. I tried to ignore it, but my mom, ever the practical woman, insisted on answering. I kept telling her to ignore it, which she thought was incredibly rude. When she finally opened the door and found no one there, she turned on her heel, grabbed her purse, and headed to the car, saying, "Mel, I'll be in the car." My dad drove her the 3 hours home and she refused to visit again. When my husband returned from overseas, we invited some friends over. As we were talking in the living room, the husband of the couple went quiet, staring fixedly at the wall by the front door. "Susan," he said to his wife, "get the baby. It's time to go." We followed his gaze and watched in stunned silence as the photo of my husband and me slowly rotated, turning itself upside down. Strange things happened often, but it became clear that whatever was in the house particularly disliked my husband. If he upset me or the kids, the activity would escalate, and something unlucky would inevitably happen to him. One day, after an argument, he left to go to a nearby Kmart. Not long after, he called me from the store, shaken. He said he was almost there when the rear driver's side wheel came off his truck, causing him to crash. After that, he started apologizing to the entity, calling it Hardy. When we moved to our next duty station, Hardy seemed to follow. But after our divorce, he vanished entirely. Looking back, I can't shake the feeling that Hardy knew something the rest of us didn't. I've lived in the same house my entire life, and for as long as I can remember, something about our basement has always felt off. The basement is big, cluttered, and frankly pretty run down, dusty with old, random items stored all over. We never really considered fixing it up since we only go down there to do laundry or stash things away. I hadn't gone down there for a while, but last month I adopted a cat, a sweet, affectionate girl who loves to play. One evening, we were in the living room, and she was chasing her favorite ball around. At one point, the ball rolled down the basement stairs, so she bolted after it, retrieved it, and resumed her game upstairs. She tossed the ball back down the stairs a few more times, chasing it with glee. But after about the 6th time, something changed. She ran to the top of the stairs, but instead of grabbing her ball, she let out this long, loud series of meows. She darted back up to me, visibly frightened, her tail puffed up in fear. Then she ran upstairs and hid for about 10 minutes, which was completely out of character for her. I knew something was up, so I decided to go downstairs myself. When I reached the basement, I noticed that both doors, one on each side of the room, were wide open. I was sure they'd been closed. Shaking off the unease, I shut them again, grabbed her ball, and went back upstairs to comfort her. A few days later, I couldn't find my cat anywhere. I called for her all around the house and finally thought to check the basement. Just as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw the right-hand door slowly creak open on its own. I froze, unable to believe what I was seeing. I screamed in shock, and as if on cue, my cat came bolting down, hissing and meowing at the door, her back arched defensively. I quickly shut the door, scooped her up, and rushed back upstairs. Since then, my cat refuses to go anywhere near the basement. She tenses up just seeing me approach it and stays as far away as possible if I even hint that I might go down there. Now, almost every time I come home, I find those basement doors mysteriously open again, even though I know they were closed when I left. My guardians think I'm imagining things, but my cat's reaction convinces me otherwise. I'm seriously considering putting a camera down there. Maybe then they'll believe me when they see what's actually going on. It started a few weeks ago when I moved into my new apartment. The place was old but cheap, and I couldn't pass it up. The landlord warned me about one thing, though: the basement. That area's off limits, he said. Just storage down there. Not safe. But curiosity got the better of me. One night, I started hearing faint noises coming from the basement, scratching sounds like someone or something was trying to get out. At first, I told myself it was just the building settling, but the sound grew louder. Eventually, I could make out what sounded like a muffled voice whispering my name. Alone in the apartment, I grabbed a flashlight and slowly made my way down the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, settling into a chill that felt like it went right through me. The basement was cluttered with dusty boxes and abandoned furniture, nothing unusual. But then I heard it, a soft whisper just behind me. I whipped around, heart pounding, but no one was there. The whispers faded, leaving the silence heavy and unnerving. I bolted back up the stairs and slammed the door, pressing my back against it, struggling to calm my breathing. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every time I started to drift off, I thought I heard faint, eerie murmurs. The next morning, I decided to confront the landlord. He paled as I described what had happened, his face taut with something like fear. "You shouldn't have gone down there," he murmured, almost to himself. "That basement, it's not what you think." Since then, the whispers have stopped, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I feel the weight of something watching me. I know it's waiting, just beyond the basement door, anticipating my return. Believe it or don't, that's up to you. But I know what I heard, and I'm not going back down there again.